5, 6, 7, 8. I feel like, okay, first, before we move forward any longer, I should stop counting down. I feel like every time I have to edit these
I love the
videos. Do
countdown.
you?
Wait,
Every
are
single.
we legit now or are we going to cut this out?
No, we're keeping this in, baby. This is gonna
All
ride
right.
for it. Give us
Right.
feedback. Do you hate the 5, 6, 7, 8? We do this because at the very beginning of every episode, I get sweaty and I get nervous and I need to ease into it. And I feel like that helps me level set.
I think it's also worth everyone knowing that to know Boyson is to know that she will do a 5, 6, 7, 8 countdown for lots of things. It was one of the first things that I found out about her is that like we might be going into a bar and she'd be like 5, 6, 7, 8, let's go. And it was like, okay, this is something she does. So it's kind of unique to her as well. So I want to keep it, but give us the feedback. Is it annoying? Who knows?
Okay. Okay. Well, this is a new dance podcast where we count everything down. But for all of you that are joining us new, this is actually the Smart in Public podcast. So we're a podcast that discusses business, careers, and life through the eyes of two PR gals just trying to keep our shit together. You know,
That's
this
right.
is how we go.
One thread at a time.
Just picking up our laundry as it falls behind us, and then you've got a breadcrumb trail of disaster.
That's right. That's right. And we launched officially this week.
Oh my God, how do you feel?
I'm really proud of us, actually. I mean, obviously, there's a huge amount of vulnerability in putting it out there because we've been working on it for a while, but like officially launching it and having people listen to it, you know, and then comment on it is quite vulnerable. But I'm really proud that we've done it. And, you know, so far the feedback's been awesome and we've, you know, we'll go through a little bit. We've got some constructive feedback from people as well, which is great. Feedback is a gift.
It sure is, baby.
Yeah. So we're going to, Boyson, please share. What is some of the feedback that we're going to work on?
Listen, first of all, I just also want to separately say thank you so much to everybody that reached out because we were really nervous. I think I sent the text message to Duffacy that I pushed the podcast post live on Instagram, and her response was, I just shit my pants. So for everyone to come back and give us not only constructive feedback, but to also give us suggestions and ideas. We've got a ton here. We're just so grateful. So thank you. Let me just read through some of these. They're hilarious. So our friend Paul Baptist, who we used to both work with at Salesforce, wrote in. He said, I'd love to hear an episode about horror stories and what not to do.
We should definitely do that.
Yeah.
And we may have to change some names for people's safety and security, but we should definitely do horror stories.
I feel like Paul is okay. I'll say everyone's first.
Oh, no. I mean, when we do the horror stories. Paul's
my God. Okay.
Yeah. When we do the horror stories, I feel like we will have to do some creative editing, but we have some. So we should do an episode on that for sure. And maybe have a guest who has a great horror story. That would be fun.
Gosh. I know. And then that way we're not doing anything risky. It's just all on the guest.
Yeah.
Make the guest the centerpiece.
Exactly.
The next one that we have is this man named Dan, who's in my mixing board group, which is a network of communications professionals, which is amazing. Shout out to Mixing Board. We love you. Dan at Gotham Ghostwriters said that a great topic would be to just discuss how to write and launch a book from beginning to end. So working through the process of writing a book and then what does a book like launch look like is such a good idea. I feel like so many people have that question, or you get as a consultant in particular, hey, I have a book launch coming up. Do you want to do media for it? And I'm like, duh, I don't know how to do that.
I was going to say, I don't know if we're the best people to answer that, but we should get a publisher on as well. So shout out to any people working in publishing, because I think that's probably the missing piece for us. We can definitely talk about from a like launching a book and the press side of things, but I think just that whole process of engaging a publisher and what that all looks like would be super interesting.
Well, I think that's where Dan can come in because he owns his own agency that does that. So
Dan, come on.
Dan, I know I haven't responded to you on your last message in Mixing Board, but here's your call to action.
Give us a call, Dan.
The next piece was from our friend Cheryl, who said that we should be posting video versions of the podcast. Good news for all of y'all is we record all of these in video. And so we're going to start pushing videos out, particularly with next week's when we have our guest interview that's going to be launching next week. But we'll start doing video clips. It's more of a me thing. I have to figure out how to do that. So
I mean, listen, team, Boyson is single-handedly carrying the tech on all of this. So I just say, please, Boyson, figure that out, and then we'll do it. So thank you, Cheryl. It's coming. It's happening.
Yep. Last one is from our friend Derek Laney, who has written to us several times. Bless his heart. We love you so much, Derek.
Shout out to Derek.
But his piece was, how do I get my leader to sound more spontaneous and authentic? Sometimes it feels like it's a dice roll based on what happens in their life just prior, which I think is so honest and so good. I love that topic.
That's a really good one. Yeah, that's a really good one. And I think spontaneity or spontaneous and authenticity can be hard as well when you're trying to also align to a company message and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, maybe we can do a episode on kind of broadly media training, I think, and how we work with execs on messaging. But then as part of that, how do you maintain that authenticity? And then I think Derek's point is about, like, you might have had some sort of, you know, family shit show going on, and then you're walking into a press interview, and how do you kind of manage that?
Yeah. And also thinking about that in terms of just speaking engagement. So getting somebody up and speaking on a panel when they've had an incredibly busy day, or it's end of quarter or something like that. Yeah. And having them speak in a keynote, how do you get them amped up and get the energy you want out of them? So I think that's a great one.
Good one. All right. And then a future guest who's coming on very soon, Pip Marlowe.
Oh, man.
Shout out to Pip. So Pip is the former CEO of Salesforce. She was also the MD of Microsoft. She's coming up on an episode really soon. But we both worked with Pip very closely. We've talked about her on the pod before. So we were engaging with her on her upcoming episode, and then we launched and the episodes went out. And I kid you not, I reckon within 30 minutes, Pip had listened. I mean, obviously a bit longer than that because both the episodes are longer than that, but it was quick. And then we got this email that was like super supportive, giving us all this like kind of shout outs, and then a list of feedback. And I was like, if that is not the most Pip Marlowe thing ever, to be like, you're amazing, I love you, here's my thoughts.
Yeah.
So we appreciate your thoughts. We're going to integrate them in. A big one that I think I really took away from her feedback, and actually my husband gave me the same feedback, is that remembering that there's an audience listening, and that some of the things we talk about might be a little bit inside baseball, and we need to kind of explain them a little bit more, explain who like Jerry Boyson is, who we mentioned in one of the episodes, and a little bit more about Jerry, and just kind of keeping in mind you, the listener. So we're going to try really hard, because for us, we get into our groove, we have a conversation, we love each other, we vibe, and we forget sometimes that people are going to be listening, which we love. So we will try and do better at explaining things and hold each other accountable to that.
Yep. Yeah, no, I thought that was good. It was so funny, just to harp on Pip's email. She goes, all the great feedback, and then, because it's me, I think is how she started.
Yeah, that's exactly how she started it. Because it's me, here are my thoughts. Loved it. So thank you everyone so much for the feedback. And so today, can I reveal what we're doing, Boyson?
Please do.
So we're gonna do something a little bit different today, a different type of episode that we hope to continue. So we're gonna give it a whirl today. But basically we're calling it a hot takes episode, and we're gonna do these sort of periodically as things come up in the news that we think are really interesting to discuss, and that potentially have, you know, a comms angle or something we can take a look at it and learn from, or think about how we would approach it as comms people. And you know, we'll try and do these as and when interesting things come up. So it may not be, you know, every week, but it might be every second week, or as we see things. And of course, if you see something and think it would be really interesting to do a hot take on it from a comms perspective, please send it in. So that's what we're doing today. We hope to do more of these. We think it's just really cool to be able to take things that are in the, you know, the zeitgeist right now and discuss them. Today, we're going to do two. So, you know, if one is of more interest to you than the other, feel free to skip through. The first one we're going to do, and it's probably pretty obvious, is the debate, the presidential debate in the US. We'll put some caveats around that when we start, around what we're going to talk about when it comes to that, because obviously, you know, hot topic, hot take. And then the second one we thought we would do, and we'll explain kind of what it is if you haven't heard about it, but it's an issue that sort of surrounded Elle Macpherson in the last sort of week or two. Elle Macpherson being the Australian model for those that maybe don't know who Elle is, but we'll go into what that was when we get to that hot take. And so hopefully you like them. Welcome feedback, but we just thought it would be a really fun thing to do, and kind of keep them as their own little special thing on the pod. So yeah, that's hot takes. We're gonna dive into the debate.
Let's
do you want to set it up?
Yeah, I'll set us up, baby. So one thing I just want to start out with is we are not going to be diving into policies. We're going to take a look at this debate from a comms perspective, from a media training perspective, from what's resonating with messaging, from what we thought was just fucking odd. And we're just going to chat about it from a comms level. So, no need to worry. If you're exhausted from politics, like most of us are in the US at the moment, this will hopefully be engaging and insightful, and probably something that, you know, you're on your treadmill or wherever you listen to your podcast and you go, oh, finally, someone said that out loud. So, or hopefully, I mean,
yeah.
It's
where
pretty
should
obvious.
We start? I don't even know where. I mean, listen, this is your country. You begin, please.
I want to start from the very beginning. And the reason that I want to do that is because I want to talk about something that I found very endearing, and that was the level of vulnerability that Kamala came in and introduced herself to Donald Trump. You could tell that that was probably either one of two things. Nerves, which she did come out straight out the gate sounding a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
But the fact that she came up and shook his hand and introduced herself was also just such a, I don't know if that was a power move or like a, I am here, look at my face. But I thought strategically it probably helped her set herself in the right mindset to then go forward and take control where she needed to.
Yeah, I think it's both. Like, I think it was somewhat of a power move. By the way, as an outsider, I was blown away that they hadn't met. Just when I heard that before, I was like, what do you mean? But yeah, I think it was somewhat of a power move, but I also thought it showed a lot of class and grace. You know, this is a person that has called her some pretty horrible things, but it was like, let's start from here. Let's meet. Let's shake hands. I thought that was really cool. And then, yeah, I could hear the nerves as well. And I always say to executives, and I think this is like to the point about the comms piece of this, is like, it's okay to be nervous. Like people get nervous. That vulnerability is okay. And I think it demonstrated that she cares. She wants to do a good job. She doesn't know if she's going to do a good job. She didn't come in arrogant is what I mean, because she came in going, oh, this is a big deal. I'm a bit shaky. And then she settled in. So I liked that. I thought that was endearing as well.
What did you think about her messaging, about Donald Trump's messaging? Let's jump into the messaging piece of it.
Yeah, I mean, so if I just purely look at it, like we said, like I'm not going to go into whether the policies are valid or not, but if I look at like what I took away, if I just as a purely objective person was trying to understand what each of them stood for, I think she was much clearer on her key messages. Like, I felt really clear that, you know, she kept saying, let's turn the page on that. Or she kept saying, we're not going to go backwards. And I heard that several times. So if you think about, and I guess that's not necessarily a key message about a policy, but it's her way of bridging to what she wants to talk about. And it was her way of not being bought into something. And if I think, again, bringing it back to if I was an executive prepping for an interview, it's like, well, what is your version of that, right? And how are you going to take whatever comes your way and get to where you need to get to? I thought that was solid. I think, you know, to Trump, it was clear that immigration is his thing that he wants to hound them on.
Yeah.
And, you know, love or hate what he said, it was very clear that that's where he's going for them, where he's gunning for them, and particularly for her, given the role that she had. So was that clear? Yeah. You know, from a messaging standpoint, absolutely. I just don't think he was as solid on how to bridge into where he wanted to get to, other than just kind of going for that immigration message.
I do think that there is a smart tactic that Trump does where he wants to go and almost take over the interview and drill into and rebut things rather than moving forward on specific answers and almost giving the moderators control. It helps him almost own the conversation, and then the moderators had to adjust. You could tell towards the end of the debate that they had kind of had enough and they started directing him back to the questions. But that was something that I thought that he did, that was, whether it was out of ego or stubbornness or really just wanting to get his message clear, it really took control of the conversation. And I think it drove Kamala to come back with needing more and more validators, which maybe hopefully he thought she was going to run out of.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I do think he does a good job of filling up air, and I think that is intentional. Like, and again, I don't know if it's ego or it's an intentional power play, but the more he talks about stuff over and over again, or as you say, like kind of rebuts or comes in or talks about something somewhat random, means that you aren't actually talking about the things that, she probably has a solid policy on and he has a policy on. It's just taking up air. So I do think he's good at that. And if you're not careful, it takes it off track, which is, I think, ideally what he wants.
Yeah. That power of control is a really hard comm skill to learn, I think, as well. Like thinking about an executive that needs to take control of an interview when a journalist is trying to steer them down another path. I'm sure PR people have been in a situation where they're listening in on a briefing and moderating, and they're kind of seeing where the journalist is going and if the executive is going to take the bait. Yeah. And you've kind of got to put your faith either in the executive taking back control of that conversation, or are they going to dive down that and you're going to have to jump in as the PR person? So that was something that I saw stick out to me. What about the non-answers?
Yeah. Listen, I think politicians are probably the best in the business at not answering a question. I think both of them had moments where they did it really well, where you didn't quite realize that they didn't answer the question. And maybe as a comms person, it's more obvious to us, I think, sometimes, because I can see what they're doing. I think there was some others where it was super obvious for both of them that they just legitimately did not answer the question. And, I think could have done a better job. Like, I don't think Trump did a great job on the veto question. And I think clearly didn't answer it, but I also don't know that he made it better. Like, I think that was not a great one for him. I think she could have done a stronger answer on some of the ones around her change in policies. I think it was quite obvious she wasn't answering that question, where she's had one position and gone to the next position. But I do think she did a better job of using those phrases to not go into some of those questions. So where it was like something that happened before, it was, well, we don't want to go backwards, or we're going to turn the page on that. Now we're looking forward. And then suddenly you are talking about something that is new and different. So I think there was good and bad examples of that type of not avoiding the answer.
There's so many good bridging techniques that she could have used, though, to really emphasize, instead of saying we don't want to go backwards, we want to go forward, she could have said something like, my policies have changed because the country has changed. Like, I am serving the needs of the people, and this is what I'm hearing, rather than going back to that kind of phrase that looks like she's just deflecting. There's so many ways that she could have kind of eased out of that and almost created a new talk track for herself by saying, this is a country of 380 million people. Like, serving all of them is a really hard job. But what I'm doing is I've got my feet on the ground. I'm listening. And that's why my policies have evolved.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're evolving for a nation that we don't know what it's going to look like in a year's time, in 2 years. Like, we have to keep pace. Like, I think all of that stuff could have been stronger. Yeah. And then, can we talk about the, who took the bait? Who do you think did well at not taking the bait, and who took the bait?
Well, I think that Trump definitely took the bait when Kamala was talking about how people didn't attend his rallies and then they left bored by the end of it. Yeah. I feel like it does not take a comms person to have recognized what she was doing. And even the commentators after the debate that were talking about the key strong points were pointing that one out as well. Yeah. But the fact that they ended up talking about dogs being eaten in Ohio, I had a couple of glasses of wine by then, and my husband and I were absolutely cackling that he took that bait and went that hard down that road.
I have no words for when that happened. I waited till the evening. So obviously here it happens during the day for us, but my husband and I deliberately didn't look at anything, and we saved it for last night, and we got out a bottle of wine and sat down and really, really went to town and enjoyed it. But That one was wild. I think the rally one, she knew exactly what she was doing, and he took it hook, line, and sinker. Dare I say, the ego and the narcissist in him couldn't resist. And so I thought she did a really good job of that, actually. And it's a good reminder for executives. I think, this is, let's just say, a presidential debate is an extreme version of all of this stuff, right?
Right.
Like, a lot of this stuff is not going to happen in a day-to-day interview, but I do think sometimes journalists try and bait with different techniques and try and push on different areas, and that can feel like you get your back up and you get defensive. And I've seen executives do that because they're passionate about the job that they're in or the company they're working for, and they feel like it's an attack. And that's a deliberate strategy by a journalist, right? It's not they don't really care. They're not really attacking. But they're trying to poke holes, which is their job too. And so I think it's a good learning to like identify when you're feeling that way. There's probably a reason and you need to sort of take a breath. And I think she did a great job of like, using her face to show what she thought, but not taking that bait. I mean, he called her a Marxist. He said she'd never liked Israel. Like, there are a lot of times he tried to poke deliberately, I think. And she just didn't buy into it. And in some ways, she let the moderators kind of dive in on the things that were really extreme, look, I think when he said the thing about babies being born and then being executed or whatever it was, and it was the moderator that had to be like, actually, that doesn't happen anywhere in America. That's not legal.
That's murder.
That's murder. Which is what we were all thinking. But the fact that she didn't necessarily dive in to kind of, I think it was really powerful that the moderator did that piece. And then Kamala did, I thought, one of the best responses in terms of women don't want this. And, and giving those examples that she gave. I think, so I just think she did a great job of like, he tried. And I feel like she didn't really take it on multiple occasions where even I was like, oh man, like feeling like I wanted to kind of, and so if I'm getting riled up, she must have been feeling that, but she did a good job, I thought.
I thought the moderators did a good job too. I mean, they had a big job on their hands.
Yeah.
The fact checking, you could tell that they'd come prepared. Like, I'm gonna talk about the Ohio dog eating the next 45 minutes.
I was leaving that for you.
But the fact that they came in and they're like, we actually talked to the city manager, and he said that's not actually happening. I think that was really good, that they already kind of knew the direction it was going to go and what they needed to have in terms of fact checking, because that was a big one with the Joe Biden and Trump debate. The fact checking was not really quite there. And so having them do that, I thought really helped. But the other side of that is that Trump supporters were like, how come no one's fact checking Kamala?
It did feel a little bit one-sided, maybe for good reason, but I felt they did when they talked about the policies that she's changed on. They could have good examples and they had quotes on what she'd said and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I think it was a little bit more one-sided. But then, I'm just going to put it out there. When you're saying some of the things that he's saying, I feel like to some extent, maybe there's a reason they have to be a little bit more thorough on that. But, that's not necessarily my place to say. But I think for me, if I look at like what I took out of it, I think like as a comms person, looking at their composure, I think was really important. I think looking at their key messages, whether they got through, I think one of her core whole things was like, I think it was the 28% number of Americans don't know her or don't know what she stands for, and she has to move that number. I feel like she did that. Like if that was the goal of the interview or the debate, then I feel like she did a good job of getting to that and not letting the airtime be taken so that she couldn't be clear on what she stood for.
Yeah, I think also the discrepancies between DJ Vance and Trump's statement. So DJ Vance, or JD, where am I?
It could be a DJ as well. I'm not sure.
I'm just going to rename him. Do you think he'll mind?
All right.
Just for context too, for people that aren't aware, JD Vance spoke at, I'm having a really hard time not saying DJ now. JD Vance spoke at the All In podcast the day before at their event. And so what the moderators were speaking towards is what he was just talking about the day before. So that disjointedness between the president and his vice presidential running mate, I think looks weak, and also has an appearance of, these are men that are not told no ever. And are they even going to collaborate and work with each other if they're elected into office? Like, just digging deeper into that. That's kind of where my mind goes from just a running position.
So forget his policies and what you think. If Trump was your exec, what do you think he did well, and what do you think he needs to work on?
I think that he did well controlling the conversation. I think he got the points out that he wanted to make, and he was very clear about them. He reiterated them often. I think what he needs to work on is not taking the bait. I think that's the big obvious one, of letting his ego go aside and making sure that he's able to show leadership through strong policies and through proof points, and not getting riled up about if people came to his rally or not, because ultimately that makes him look weak, when really he could have been a lot stronger just by standing by what his key messages were.
Yeah.
What do you think about Kamala?
Yeah, if she was my exec, I would say temperament was spot on. I think the key messages were clear. I think there were certain policies that were clearer than others. So I think I'd be working on that next, is to like some of these tougher ones. Like, I think it's super clear she's going to support the middle class. It's super clear she's for small business. That came through very strongly, I thought. I thought it was still a bit weak on immigration. And considering that's what he's pushing quite hard, I just think she could have, like, if it was my executive, I would say, let's keep working on how we're going to address that. Because I think that's still, and when I say address that, it's not necessarily what her policy is, but just being a bit stronger and clearer on that, I think, from a messaging standpoint. But overall, for me, like, her not taking the bait, I think, for me, put her ahead.
Yeah, you can tell that she's been a prosecutor for many years. Like, she debated extremely well. She had great composure. She commanded the mic when she was speaking, and she looked straight into that camera, had her hands moving. Like, I just thought that if anyone thought that maybe she couldn't be a powerful world leader and they had doubts about a woman in office, the way that she managed herself against Donald Trump, who is notoriously known for commanding a room, this should put those doubts aside for sure.
Yeah. And look, it's not my country. I'm not voting. So I'm purely looking at this from a, like, who did well and how, and putting aside our own personal views of who we like and who we don't like and all that sort of stuff, trying to keep an objective view. I still think she held herself in a better position from a composure and not taking the bait perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I think that a lot of people felt like she came out with the win on that one.
Nice.
And I think there's going to be a second debate. I think she's ready for it. I think she's already actually said she'd do
hot take
another
number
one.
2. Oh my take number 2. Very different hot take.
All right, everyone. Go.
What happened with Elle Macpherson, Katie Boyce?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to give the version of what I know. I'm going to share some of the bits of news when I was doing some digging on kind of what I've seen. Let's just be clear, though. The people that are commenting on this, so the publications that are commenting on this are like TMZ, People Magazine. I have a Fox News quote in here, so buckle down. But I just, listen.
In Australia, it's not just kind of the gossip mags and that kind of thing. Like, she did this interview that started this whole thing, and we'll explain what happened in a minute. But she did this interview on 60 Minutes in Australia, and then it kind of went to every, like, major, broadcast and radio and stuff. So it has been in legitimate media too. I mean, I think People's legitimate. Love a good People magazine, but just it's gone everywhere, guys. What happened? What did Elle?
So let's dive in. So Elle is currently on a promotional circuit for her new book, and this book, Elle, is really all about, like, her life and health and friendships and experiences in her career. And it's a book about a lot of things. But in this book, she mentioned that her breast cancer has disappeared due to naturopathic treatment after not being satisfied with recommended medical treatments presented to her. So let me just kind of read some of these quotes, and then I want to get your thoughts. But People Magazine quoted her in an interview with, I guess I would say I'm really pleased that it has sparked conversation and discussion, because with the discussion comes awareness and comes growth. And this is what she said around the backlash of the initial interview that had generated. She said, it's uncomfortable for me, but I think it's very worthwhile in that sense. So we'll start with that quote. Fox News, I've got a couple here, and I just want to read through these because I think it's interesting context, particularly if you're not really up to speed on all the hubbub. Yeah. So Machperson, who wrote 17 other chapters about how in her 60 years she's approached difficult experiences, including the demise of a relationship and alcoholism, stressed that her book is not solely about her cancer. The quote is, "The chapter itself isn't really about cancer. It's about how to make a decision when you're grouped with fear and adversity. The book is so much more than that one particular chapter that illustrates how to make a decision. It wasn't the decision I made that was important so much. It's how did I get there?" And she also noted, depending on where you live, treatment plans can look different, saying, I saw a lot of medical advice, and, the bottom line was that it was very interesting because every doctor had a different opinion on how to treat my specific case of breast cancer. And there was no clear path, and there were no guarantees either way. And so I made a decision based on all the information that I had gathered and what felt right for me. And it's important to mention that I am not giving advice to other people. I'm sharing my experience. So that's kind of where she's trying to then reposition, which I think that messaging in the second piece that I've taken kind of from that Fox News is clear and interesting. And I wonder why, share your perspective, Dusty, around why do you think this is blown up?
Yeah. So she went on 60 Minutes here and did a big interview on 60 Minutes, but the piece that really got the attention was the fact that she said she didn't do the chemotherapy treatment that was recommended to her, and then took a more holistic approach and a naturopathic approach. And I think, from there, it kind of blew up for a number of reasons. I think, quite a few medical professionals in Australia came out. There's one here, a medical oncologist, Fran Boyle, says that it sends the wrong message. A lot of people came out and said, that's not great advice for people, and that's not always the case, and all this sort of stuff. So I think that's why it blew up, is it was so controversial in the sense that it was saying, I didn't do this and I went down this path and now I'm fine.
And do you think that the doctors coming in and rebutting and saying that's not right stirred the pot and created this? Or do you think it was her actually messaging?
Worried. I think health professionals in Australia were genuinely worried that women might misinterpret those comments. And I think I want to caveat all of this to say Elle Macpherson is allowed to do whatever the F she wants with her body. And I was telling Boyson this earlier, and I'll share it now, but my little 4-year-old boy has got this new phrase that he's picked up probably from daycare, I don't know, but he often tells me my body, my choice in relation to really random things. So he hasn't quite got the right context. It'll be like he doesn't want to put his pajamas on, so it'll be my body, my choice. But I love that sentiment, and I love that he's learned that because that's absolutely my perspective. So I guess I want to caveat all of this to say, I think she should be allowed to do whatever she wants with her body, just like every other woman should be allowed to do whatever they want with their body. I do think there's an element of this around privilege, and I think that's why also people maybe came out, to your point about why did this blow up. Elle Macpherson can access the best holistic, naturopathic treatments. I think as part of it, as far as I read, she went to this specific holistic center, and she had all these changes made to her lifestyle, her diet, the whole thing. And that's not available to everyone. Number one, I think if you're someone who's in a different position with your cancer, and I don't know enough about the type of cancer she has or what other people have, but I think it is not an option for many people. Many people do need a more aggressive approach and wouldn't survive with that. So I think it's the danger in having a platform and having influence and having privilege and then delivering. I think to your point, in the subsequent articles, she has gone further and given that context to say, this might not be right for everyone. This isn't me giving advice. This is just me sharing my story, which she also has a right to do. It is her story. That is how she's handled it. So it's a really complex one, but I do think the media jumped on it because it was a person in power and privilege sharing quite an unusual perspective on how to deal with cancer. And I think health professionals in Australia were very worried that people would take that and take it to their GP and take it to their oncologist and say, well, Elle Macpherson did this, and so I think I'm going to do that too, when maybe that isn't the best option for them. And I think she just needs to be careful with that privilege and that influence. That's my perspective. Like, she's allowed to do what she wants to do, but be aware of what that's going to do for other people.
Well, and I think the influence and privilege is also, when you think about it, from the fact that she thought she could just go out and talk about her experience and be able to, and this is coming from like a comm strategy perspective, but thinking about somebody going out and talking about their experience and thinking, I can say whatever I want, it's not going to affect anyone else because I'm not giving health advice. Like, that feels very unthoughtful to me. Like, I think that there wasn't a conversation probably that happened in the background when she was prepping for this interview around, you need to be sensitive and have some language around specifically calling out and getting ahead of this whole nightmare that's happened to her. So like, in that 60-minute interview, she should have said all of these quotes that were supporting and really validating how this is just her experience in that interview, rather than trying to clean it up in the background, because no one's going to read the cleanup. They're just going to read the tabloids, you know?
Or even I would have gone, if I was her, I would have caveated it all at the start and said, this is my individual story. It's my individual choice for my body. I am in no way recommending what I'm about to say for everybody. I'm just saying this is what I did, and I'm sharing my story in that someone might hear it and want to try it, and that's up to them, and they need to talk to their doctors. And I want to share it because it's a part of my journey, but I just want to be super, super clear up front that I'm not a doctor. I think she could have been a little bit stronger on, this is individual to me and I am not a medical professional, at the beginning. So I think you're right. I think the other thing that like doesn't sit with me right, and I don't know if this is just me being cynical, but like, she has a wellness brand. It's a supplement brand. I've heard her talking before about how, you know, she was struggling, I think it was with perimenopause or menopause. And, you know, then she just worked with this doctor and created this greens thing. And I'm paraphrasing here. This is not how she says it, but, you know, and then.
Really? You're kidding.
And I just, there's a part of me that's like, this push for natural, this push for holistic, when you have a wellness company with supplements, it just sits a bit funny with me. And I don't know, maybe I'm just cynical, but yeah.
I also think that there's a feeling of heightened sensitivity around the discussion of doctors off the back of COVID. So despite how she feels about vaccinations or doctor recommended treatment, people are very staunch on whether they protect doctors or they don't trust them. And it's a really divisive topic. And I think kind of digging into Elle's past life. So her credibility in relation to health was unfortunately kind of determined and diminished by her ex-husband, who had gone and done like fake studies around how vaccines and like causes autism. So to me, it's just like so tone deaf and privileged to come out and make comments that not only discredits doctors, but also diminishes the struggle that cancer patients go through because they're not eating the right food.
I guess I just feel for the women who this isn't an option. And when you look like Elle and you've had Elle's career, I just think she could have been more thoughtful. And I think that's what the medical professionals who are coming out are kind of trying to say, is like, this isn't going to work for everyone and we need to be really like conscious of this and all that sort of stuff. The flip of this, and it's interesting because we did the Blake Lively piece in our other episode, right? And the flip of this is this culture of, and we've talked about this culture of kind of women bashing that is going on in the media a little bit. And so I'm like very hesitant to be like piling on again, because I do think women are getting a harder time of it when they say something that isn't quite right or that people don't like. They're getting hounded by the media, and I think that isn't right. In this case, I think she could have been more thoughtful. Like I said, I could give a shit. Well, she's allowed to do whatever she wants to do for her body. I'm all for that. So I'm cautious of like weighing in, even though we've just weighed in. But I just wanted to put that out there because I know it was funny. We had some feedback from someone on the Blake piece that like, where are the men talking about that movie and the issues in that movie, and where are they standing up for what that movie is about? And I think that was a really good point that we used. But listen, that's all I want to say about Elle Macpherson, because, you know, your body, your choice, Elle, as my 4-year-old would say. So you do you, and same goes for every other woman. You know, I think that's a nice link between the debate and Elle is ultimately women should have the right to choose what they do with their bodies.
Love
that's my own personal viewpoint.
Yeah, I love your links and I love your style. Deficit, do you want me to end this one with a dumb in private? Because I've got a big one this week.
Yes.
So for everyone that's not
dumb this week.
For everyone not familiar, we always talk about how to be smart in public, but something that we also do is a lot of dumb things in private. So that's how we like to end each of our segments. Mine this week, you might have seen coming, you might not have, but recently I was talking to Duffy about this a few weeks ago, and I've started to get my nails done. I am not a nails done kind of lady, but now that I've gotten them done, they're like getting longer and longer. And I got my nails done too long and I couldn't get my contact lenses out of my eyes. And it was taking me about 15 or 20 minutes a night to get my contacts out of my eyes. And on Sunday, you may have noticed I was wearing in our prep call on Monday, Devacy, I was wearing glasses. That is because when I went to take my contacts out of my eyes, I broke a blood vessel in my eyeball and made it bleed.
Oh my God.
So I got my nails taken off.
So the nails, I was going to say, so what do the nails look like now? Are they cut? Are they short?
Yes, they're short. They're just normal nails now. Like, they're not long.
There are some people in this world who can have beautiful long nails. Sounds like you are not one of them for a contact lens reason. And I'm going to confess, I'm a nail biter, so I am also not one of them. I am not good with my nails. You'll know if I'm nervous. I'll be biting my nails. It's a disgusting habit. My husband hates it, but I'm 38 years in and I can't break it. So, you know, we'll see how we go. I don't really have a job in private this week. Or do I? You tell me. So I think it's a, smart in every way choice that I've made.
I know where this is going.
I ordered a new hat this week, or like last week, and it arrived this week. And my husband is embarrassed when I wear it and thinks it's a dumb in private, because he was like, I don't know why you bought that hat and now you're wearing it out. So I'm going to put it on, and I know we haven't got video going yet. So I'll describe it, but we will get video going, and then you can go back and watch this and see it. But basically...
Hold on. If you want to see, I will put this picture up on the Instagram post when we release the episode. Yeah, I'll take a screenshot.
Follow us on Instagram, Smart and Public Pod. So it says Twin Mum on it. And it's like chocolate brown. And it's got, what would you call this, beige writing? Chocolate brown with beige writing. I think it's cool. It looks like what the young kids are wearing these days. People are wearing hats with slogans. So I went and got myself one that says Twin Mum. Now, my husband believes that it's a bit stupid because the main time I wear it is when I'm pushing the twins in the pram. And he's like, it's really obvious that you're a twin mum. You don't need a hat that says it. I think it's cool. You guys be the judge. Go and have a look on Instagram.
I think it's a good looking hat.
Thanks, man. I don't know if I suit hats. I mean, that's a whole other conversation. I have a weird shaped head, so I don't know if I in general. Like, you look really good in caps, and often people, once you watch the videos, you'll see Boyson often is wearing a cap. Not today, ironically, but often. And she looks really good in a cap. I'm not sure I do. I have big ears too that stick out, so I have to like put my hair on. She's got a cap.
Those are hats. We got our hats on.
Listeners, Katie Boyson has popped on a hat and already looks way cooler than I do. I feel like that's why I am Liz Lemon.
Yeah.
Listeners, lots of people tell me I am like Liz Lemon. Liz Lemon, my alter ego. I don't disagree in some ways, but like this is an example of where like I feel like Liz Lemon would buy this hat. I think she looked cool in this hat. And so anyway, that's my dumb in private. I've got this cool hat. I'm going to wear it. I don't care.
Keep rocking it. What does Andrew know?
Yeah, nothing.
Nothing about being a twin mom. That's right.
No, that's for sure.
Okay, well, that is our very first hot take episode. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And thank you so much for all the feedback again. If you have a topic you want us to cover, please reach out. It's on email, hello@smartandpublicpod.com. On Instagram, we're Smart in Public Pod. Same one for TikTok. I promise we'll start posting TikTok soon. TikToks scare me, and so I don't know.
Too old for TikTok.
We'll get there, I promise. And then you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Spotify. So please, if you like this podcast, go in and listen, rate, review, and subscribe. Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Okay, bye.